There once was a man from LA who drove to the store every day. He got to a light and cried out in spite, "Why didn't I take the highway?" Hey guys, James here again with another game review, and today I want to talk about Mini Motorways, a traffic simulation and puzzle game. Mini Motorways takes the real-life geography of major cities and asks you to create an efficient road system to keep the city running. This game is the sequel to Mini Metro, a game where you create city subway lines. Similar to its predecessor, Mini Motorways features a great minimalistic aesthetic, a unique ambient soundtrack, and simplistic yet hypnotic gameplay that can hook anyone. So, without further ado, let's dive into this review. Oh, and also a quick disclaimer, I did receive this game for free. In Mini Motorways, you can choose from an assortment of real-life metropolises to start from, such as LA, Munich, and Tokyo. Each level has different geographic features like mountains and rivers that you'll need to work around as you create your city. After you decide where you want to go, you can pick from a few different color schemes to play in. Usually, the main color scheme is colorful, vibrant, and also different with each level. Then there's also a night mode, which is definitely a little easier on the eyes. And finally, there's a variant which is meant to mimic paper maps and modern map applications like Google Maps. The game runs in real time, simulating days and weeks. As time passes, houses and supermarkets of different colors can pop up. With a simple left click and drag, you can create roads across the grid to allow cars to begin traveling. Just as easily, you can also right click and drag to remove roads. Every once in a while, supermarkets will generate pins. For each pin, a car from a house of the same color will leave, collect the pin, and then head on back home. These pins will accumulate, and if too many are accumulated in any one supermarket, a timer begins. If you can't quickly reduce the amount of pins before the timer fills up, your entire city shuts down, and then you lose the game. I don't know what these supermarkets are selling, but apparently they're pretty important. Every in-game week, you're then prompted with potential rewards you can choose from. These will include more road tiles, as well as some special tiles. These special tiles include bridges, which allow you to build across rivers, tunnels, which allow you to burrow through mountains, roundabouts and traffic lights, both of which can be used to manage the flow of traffic. And then finally, and maybe most importantly, you have the motorway, which allows you to directly connect two areas and bypass other roads and obstacles. And honestly, that's the main gist of the game. The map will slowly expand as you play, with supermarkets and houses constantly spawning throughout, which leads to more complex road systems. Sometimes supermarkets will upgrade into IMAX theaters or stadiums or whatever these are, and these will have higher demands for pins. There will also be some supermarket areas that will have two zones and entrances, forcing you to eventually mingle your roads. There's a couple of available game modes that make some slight changes to the gameplay formula. In the classic game, your goal is to collect as many trips as you can before your city shuts down. You can then compare your score against others. If you get 1,000 trips on a map, you then unlock the challenge mode. These challenge modes will have modifiers to change how that specific session might feel, such as not allowing you to build motorways, or adding tree huggers so that you can't destroy any trees. There are also daily and weekly challenges that allow you to compete against other players as well. Newly added to the game are the Expert mode and Endless mode. If you manage to get a high enough score on the different challenges, then you can unlock Expert mode, which allows you to choose from all possible choices at the end of every week. But all of your road placements are permanent here, so you have to build wisely. Meanwhile, in Endless mode, instead of going week by week and trying to survive as long as possible, here you try and build up to different milestones, which I sort of interpret as trips per minute or a similar metric. It's nice to have a less stressful mode in the game, but I did find that unless you go back and rework your city often, Endless mode can often end with you plateauing and not being able to advance anymore. I get the idea, but it's kind of silly to me that Endless mode can effectively end if players aren't skilled enough to reach the next milestone. This leads me to think that maybe a creative mode would be the natural next addition to the game to help give another mode for players to enjoy at their own pace. So, how does Mini Motorways actually feel to play? Well, as I mentioned at the beginning, I personally found Motorways to be a very hypnotic experience, and is actually reminiscent in some ways of other games I've played this year like Stacklands or Dorfro Antique. Watching the little cars scurrying around like ants is very calming, and everything is presented really well. However, while I do think the pace of the game starts off quite calm and maybe a bit too slow, it will eventually increase until a point where it can feel quite difficult to keep up with the increasing demands. There are also some design choices that I think can lead to potential issues, although how much these bother you can actually vary from person to person. First, because of the random spawning of houses and supermarkets, there are times where it feels like you can actually get a bit screwed if you have some bad luck. House spawns can also be quite bunched, leading to some weird looking neighborhoods, but this dynamic makes it so that sessions are more intriguing as you try to find workarounds to these weird layouts. You could also try and control spawns of buildings by blocking them with roads, but this can actually have varying results. I also kind of wish we had the ability to place the entrances to supermarkets. Right now, since it randomly spawns, the market can have some odd entrance positions, and as a result, you often need to create unorthodox roads to maneuver to the entrance. I'm also not so sure if the bonus structures we get are worth it. Motorways are definitely the best, and bridges and tunnels both have their own use cases, but I personally find that traffic lights and roundabouts can be a bit hit or miss. Sometimes it just feels like they create more traffic than they actually fix, although this could of course be because they're placed in important areas. I think I've just had some mixed results. Making changes is a big part of the game, and thankfully, removing roads and features is very simple. However, while early on it's easy and intuitive, I find that the late game redesigning can feel pretty much impossible. This is because you might need to wait for already outbound traffic to return home on that same path before it officially gets removed and sent back to your inventory. With this potential delay, you'll sometimes find yourself waiting with no way to fix the growing congestion, and by the time you actually get the roads in your inventory, the pins might have already accumulated to the point of no return. Because of this, I think it's really important to be proactive and vigilant with finding potential problem areas and addressing them as early as possible. I do want to point out that, while the game is very much a traffic sim, it actually plays more like a puzzle game in my opinion. In a lot of ways, it's reminiscent of this mobile game I used to play, Flow Free, where you try and connect same colored dots in a grid, and I personally think this is because of how the trips and pins work in the game. Whereas in other city and traffic sim games, individual houses might have needs that need to be fulfilled, and so they'll go to different areas and go to work and whatnot, but here, the supermarkets are the ones with the needs. Supermarkets will request any connected houses to send cars to clear out the pins that build up. Because of this, I feel like the dynamic of the cities feels a little bit different. This isn't necessarily an issue. Again, I think it was a design choice, but basically, I personally think that if you're looking for a realistic traffic simulator, this might not be it. Finally, I wanted to quickly discuss the presentation. Like I mentioned before, this is probably one of the strongest areas of the game. I love the minimalist art style, and I think it's been vastly improved from Metro. I just have one minor nitpick around how some of the roads and special tiles are drawn, like how this tunnel extends past the mountain, or how this road intersects with this supermarket. The music is quite pleasant as well, although sometimes it can be a little much. Let me explain. The music has this very lo-fi, ambient feel to it. Combined with the sound effects of the cars and pins popping and whatnot, it creates this weird, offbeat soundtrack that will be unique to your session. While I do think it adds a special dynamic to the game and sound design, it actually can feel a bit too intense on the ears, especially if you play with headphones. There's going to be some popping and other sound effects, and it has this intense, almost ASMR-like effect. It also doesn't help that the volume options in the game are not really that great, so I think it'd be nice if they made the individual aspects of the sound design adjustable. Oh, and in an odd twist, for a game that's supposed to be so calming and pleasant, when you pause the game, the music actually slows down quite a bit as well. This can lead to some slightly horrific music. Like seriously, listen to this. I'm getting some real Lavender Town vibes. Overall though, while I did have a number of nitpicks, I actually think Mini Motorways is a pretty great game. It's more complex and improved in pretty much every facet when compared to its predecessor, although again, I do think the dynamic feels a little bit different. I think it's the perfect kind of game to play at the end of the day when you just want to relax and listen to a podcast or something. I'm gonna be honest though, I was struggling a little bit with the score on this one. I was kind of fluctuating between a 3 and a 3.5, but ultimately decided to go with a 3.5. I just thought it was a very enjoyable experience that actually kept me coming back for more. Again, just keep in mind that to me, it felt more like a puzzle game than a traffic game, so if you're looking for that type of experience, you might be better off with a game like Cities Skylines. The game clocks in at $10, which, it's not bad. It's maybe a bit pricey for such a simple game, and maybe $5 or so seems more appropriate to me, but again, I like the game enough where I don't think $10 is a bad price at all, especially if you think you're going to play it. Obviously though, everyone's appetite is a little bit different. Definitely give it a look if you want to try your hand at a nice, relaxing puzzle game. But hey, that's just me. Let me know down below what you think. Have you tried Mini Motorways, and what'd you think of it? And of course, thank you so much if you made it this far. If you had a good time, please consider clicking some of those buttons. And as usual, I hope you have a great rest of your day. Peace.